Here we see pickles go into the slicing machine. The long slice is just one of a number of ways in which they can be sliced, chunked, chipped, or otherwise dissected.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey. There are few icons of American Jewish life more quintessential than the kosher dill pickle. Our guest today has produced several paintings of pickles, a bust of Larry David, a 10-step apricot noodle kugel recipe carved into 2 stone tablets, and much more.
We're delighted to chat with Hannah Eve Rothbard, a multimedia artist, curator, and writer based in New York City. Hannah, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thanks so much for having me.
What led you to a career in fine art?
I have always made art, and I think it was all I wanted to do. I never really saw myself doing anything else. So I applied to art school and kind of just did that. And I think with art, you never know where you're going to land. Like, you're always going to try to make art, but I ended up working in galleries as a curator, writer. I couldn't have told you that's exactly what I was going to do, but I'm a little open-minded. Like, as long as I'm working with art, I'm kind of happy. And so I'm figuring it out still, making my own work, working at the gallery, and who knows if that's what that's always going to be.
Is it true that for an artist, like, everything you do is art in a way? Like, even if you had a job at a coffee shop or something like that, it would still be within the realm of the arts?
I say yes and no. I think, and actually, I just got certified as a personal trainer, so I'm about to have another gig that is completely unrelated. And I think what I love about that is that it is not art, and it is just like a thing I can do that has nothing to do with my career. I don't have to really think about it in the same way. It's just something I enjoy doing and helping people with. That's another nice way to make some cash, but it actually feels like, it's more like if I do that, I can make more brain space and time to focus on my work. So I do think that not always, but also I do believe, like, even if I'm not painting all the time and I'm in a period of like thinking more, it's definitely still working. Even if you're on vacation and like you're always a vessel for ideas to come through.
Much of your work explores the erosion, transformation, and renewal of Jewish life in the diaspora. What are some of those themes?
That kind of started with research into the Lower East Side, which, for those who don't know, is a neighborhood in Manhattan, the subject of Crossing Delancey and a lot of iconic films and such like that. And I moved to New York for college. I went to NYU. And I spent so much time in the Lower East Side, and like I kind of knew it was Jewish, but I didn't know that much. I knew, you have some delis still. And then I learned, like, after years of living in New York, I moved to the Lower East Side, and my Savta, my grandmother, was like, "Oh yeah, my parents grew up, or my mom grew up a block from there. Do you know this spot? And oh, that building at 128 Rivington Street, like that's where my grandparents had their business." And I'm like, I don't know, my whole world expanded. I was like, this is crazy. And I just did a lot of research, and I was thinking so much about place, about how a neighborhood like the Lower East Side and these specific buildings, they were tenement buildings. It was like a site for economic mobility and growth. And you had the Jewish immigrants, and then when they were economically stable, like my family, they went to Florida, and then a new immigrant group comes in. So that was a lot of what I was thinking about, like specifically based, like tied to this neighborhood, this place, and thinking about growth in this country and the places that at least like my family's history is tied to in a lot of Jewish American families. And that also, I was thinking about specific buildings, tenement buildings, and that also led me to thinking about how so much of culture is tied to the home and preserved through objects that are used in a home, like textiles, like needlepoint, food. That's, I've been super into recipes for that reason too.
I've noticed that New Yorkers are kind of obsessed with geography of New York, and they can remember streets and intersections and buildings in a way that is just kind of alien to me as someone living in Southern California. That's just not the way I was raised or the way that I see the world. Is that something that you had to acclimate to when you moved there?
No, I guess it just feels really normal after a while. I guess it's just what you do. Yeah, like when you meet someone and they tell you they live in a neighborhood, you're like, "What are your cross streets?" And, yeah, the fact that my grandmother remembers the, like, cross streets of where her parents lived, where her grandparents had businesses, yeah, I don't know, it's hard to forget because I mean, so much of Manhattan, at least as a grid, not Brooklyn, but, like, not so much all of Brooklyn, but in Manhattan, it's pretty easy, so I think it's kind of intuitive, but also I think I don't know, you live here long enough, the city feels really small, so it feels like you're just telling someone what little corner of the neighborhood it's in.
I imagine that plays into the Jewish memories as well, the neighborhoods and the smells and everything else that is associated with that.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I definitely think a lot about place, related to neighborhoods. Yeah, I did a lot of research in the Lower East Side. I've also I minored in urban design architecture studies in college, and I just yeah, I've always been interested in, like, social use of space, and that's definitely something I'm thinking about a lot.
Several years ago when I was at a family reunion in New York, we did the kind of cheesy, bus tour of New York City, but we also did the Tenement Museum tour, which I think didn't fully seep in. But now, over the years, hearing how many people lived right around that area, it's hitting home like, wow, it was really, really, really concentrated. Also, it feels a little bit like it could be kind of that urban myth or origin myth story about, like, oh, my grandparents were on the Mayflower. Well, it seems like everybody's grandparents were living in those tenements. And it's just like, wow, it was really, really clustered. It's pretty astonishing.
Yeah, the tenements and also, like, Kings Highway in Brooklyn and Newark, you hear a lot too. Like, that's where my family was, and I hear a lot of people that were all there, and they're all in Florida now.
So you primarily worked in mixed media painting. Could you take us through your process?
Yeah, it looks a little different every time, but it's a lot of collage within collage. So, I mean, the starting point always is collecting, is that I have tons and tons of materials in my studio that I just collect over the years. Friends give them to me. Even my grandma saves like calendars and magazines. So I have a ton of scrap paper, some of which is literally scraps that I'll use for other things. And some of it is like rich colors and textures and things like that. So the first step besides collecting is usually creating like rolls of collage. Like I'll take a roll of paper and lay it out and make textures that I'll use as like wood or bricks or concrete, denim, things like that. So it's a lot of like pasting down magazine clippings, tearing them up, drawing with oil pastel, covering it with paint, ripping things again, putting them down. And then when you cut that up into like rectangles for wood, for example, like you have these really like textured and visually interesting pieces as opposed to just like a solid piece of brown paper. And I will go in the image on a canvas and go in and collage with that. And sometimes it'll be a little bit more abstract, but basically the process on the canvas is using these like collages that I've already made alongside flat pieces of paper, magazine clippings, and I'll also paint on the canvas. And a lot of the painting itself, I'll use paper as pops of color and highlights and things like that. So it's never just paint.
Now that we're in such a digital age, and I know a lot of artists are adopting digital techniques and so forth, do you find it kind of therapeutic or even like connective to still be working with physical things in the way that you described?
Yeah, I mean, it's, like, funny because obviously we're talking so much about AI and the way art is changing, but so many, like, digital tools have been around for a very long time. So even, like, in high school, I was working with Photoshop, which was, helpful sometimes in building a reference photo if you're trying to put a lot of references together, but I feel like even that feels like a very analog process. Like, I was never filtering and, like, transforming things to paint. It was more like, "Okay, I took 4 different pictures. Let me try to combine them in a digital image." And honestly, now sometimes I'll work from several images, but I don't even need to combine them. I just look at a lot of things at one time. But yeah, I feel like digital tools are not so much a part of the process. It doesn't feel, yeah, like necessary to the work. It's more reference if I need it. But yeah, I don't know. It kind of has like nothing to do with my work. I don't think I'm like interested in talking about, digital tools and the internet and mediated images so much.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you have something like a morgue file that, comic book artists and other illustrators used to have, where they'd pull out a picture and it would all be physical, and they'd collect things like you're saying, and have a more tangible connection to these images.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that my work is becoming less tied to a plan in some ways. Like I'm going in more and just kind of seeing what happens. If anything, working a little more abstract and less like from specific or needing things to look like specific people or specific images. And so there's like not as much of a need for me to reference or like build references so much. But yeah, I would say like, yeah, the extent of my digital tools these days is just like printing an image.
Do you have any opinions about AI?
In general, I fall somewhere between tech optimist and I wouldn't call myself a skeptic. I would say more of like I have ethical opinions and concerns, but I think in the art world, the popular opinion is just to be like anti AI because its effects on the environment and other ethical concerns. But I think like you can acknowledge those things and also engage with something that's incredibly helpful and going to change a lot for everyone. So I am definitely using it in a business standpoint and personal, like helping me organize things when it comes to my career, organizing opportunities. And yeah, I find it really useful, but I do not use it for my art. And I think that's very important to separate like the human and the creative. And I'm sure there's people where it actually makes sense to use it. It definitely doesn't apply to my work, and there's nothing I can use it for, but it helps organize my life so that I can have more time to be creative.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe.
I really love your piece titled So Romantic, featuring a bouquet of flowers in a kosher dill pickle jar. I've certainly used pickle jars in that way, but is there a deeper meaning?
That is exactly the meaning. It's pretty much so that reference photo was taken after a long weekend with 12 Jews in a cabin in the Poconos, and we bought this massive jar of pickles, and we're like, oh yeah, we'll finish that easily, and we did. And then my friend used it for flowers, and she was like, this is cute. Because I think I had told her I wanted to make that as a painting. So she took the reference for me. And yeah, so it actually, yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was used for that. And I don't know, I like these like funny kind of titles sometimes. Like I made another painting called Hot Date that had a jar of pickles, a can of tuna, a wine glass with like a lipstick stain on it, and my friend's phone number on a napkin. And it's like stuff like that. I've thought a lot about like putting pickles and tuna with like makeup or jewelry, and thinking a lot about like Jewish femininity. And so I don't think So Romantic is necessarily, I don't know that you look at that and you're like, that's Jewish femininity, but it's kind of like within the realm of things I'm thinking about, and like how romantic to receive flowers in a pickle jar.
Yeah, especially since it's notoriously difficult to get the smell of pickles out of a pickle jar. So the flowers are going to kind of smell like pickles too.
Yeah, perfume.
I'm really appreciating, the honesty of your work. Did anybody call your friend's number when you included it in that artwork?
I left off one number. So if they wanted to try, they obviously could try every combination, but no, nobody's called.
You received a Fulbright Award and spent the 2024-25 academic year in Germany. What was the project you did there?
So that project was researching the contemporary regeneration of the Jewish community in Berlin. So I was there for 10 months and was really immersed in the local community. So a lot of it was like archival research, using Jewish Museum photo archives and the Staatsbibliothek, like the state library, things like that. But a lot of it was also just like going to Jewish events and talking to people and like really getting a feel for what it means to be Jewish in Berlin today. And it really, people have asked me if I am from there, if I have a family connection. I actually don't. And it felt very fitting to be there among foreigners because the community in Berlin is mostly not German, and for obvious reasons, but it's actually mostly Soviet, because after the fall of the Soviet Union, Germany encouraged Jews to immigrate. wanted to rebuild their population up until a certain point. Then they're like, we're good. But so a lot of, the majority of the Jewish population in Germany comes from the former Soviet Union and their descendants. And then it's a lot of immigrants from the US, from Israel, from other countries in Europe, from Argentina. So it feels like this community of people that really like want to build, cultivate community and like forge a new identity and figure out what that identity is.
It sounds like it's kind of like the new Lower East Side with, Jewish immigrants coming in and building a place for themselves.
Yeah, but at the same time, so much less isolated, like not out of necessity. It's like a beautiful thing to build this community. But at the same time, obviously there was like a necessity at that time of immigrants forming, immigrant specific communities, but it's really beautiful in Berlin to be a part of the city and, for Jewish culture to be welcome in the clubs. And, I went to several events, like a Purim event, a Sukkot event in nightclubs. So it's definitely like a part of the city, something that the city honors.
What are some of the works that came out of that?
So there's a page on my website that you might have seen, which I think says Berlin Paintings, and I exhibited it. I exhibited the full body of work here in New York in January, February. So the project is complete, and some of those paintings were like a 7-foot tall self-portrait called Self-Portrait of a Degenerate Artist. So that had to do with this art history in Germany of the degenerate artists, which were not all Jewish, but artists that, the Nazis believed to have some sort of Jewish quality. So it was like if it was abstract, if it was expressionist, these kinds of works that the Nazis didn't like were considered degenerate. And they organized an exhibition of the degenerate artists, and it was supposed to be humiliating, as opposed to this like neoclassical, like ideal German style. So it was like another way in which art is related to like idealism and this like ideal German body, Germany for Germans. And so I was relating myself to the degenerate artists, but also to this history of Jugend magazine, which was an art and literary magazine before the war. So it was originally like this avant-garde publication. It eventually became like Nazi propaganda and was publishing this like neoclassical and like Germany for Germans, that kind of work, but kind of just like situating myself in this history, putting myself on the cover of this magazine.
I remember hearing that when the Nazis did the degenerate art showing, it was actually really popular among Germans. It was like supposed to denigrate, all the artists in it, but it ended up being like a very successful show.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that people would actually see it as bad, because this was like all the artwork was looted from the best museums. It wasn't, it was work that was already considered like the best living artists.
You also direct the 81 Leonard Gallery in New York City, which showcases emerging and mid-career artists and encourages experimentation. Could you tell us about the gallery?
Nancy Pantier is the gallery owner. It's her studio in the back, and the front is the gallery. And I manage her work and run her gallery. And I've worked with her since 2019. It's been a long time. And we bring like an intergenerational approach. She is in her 70s, I'm in my 20s. And so we work with a lot of younger artists and also later career artists. And it brings like a really interesting dialogue to the space. And it's all, living artists, contemporary, and we have a lot of fun. And we bring this, approach of both being artists ourselves. So always try to be true to the artist's visions and feel like a project space that benefits from the location among all the very serious big galleries.
Do you have like a preference in terms of the kind of work that is shown there? Is it more whimsical or what's the vibe?
Not necessarily whimsical. I think so. Nancy and I are both painters mostly, and she's an abstract, like large scale abstract painter. And so we both like definitely bring an appreciation for beauty, for technical competence, but we also work with artists who maybe are sometimes more political or more grotesque, even working with like liquid latex and things like that. There's definitely like a lot of room for different kinds of expression, but as long as it resonates with us, that it feels relevant and there's some part of it that feels beautiful that you like enjoy looking at or engaging with, because there's plenty of conceptual art that it doesn't have to look good. It doesn't, maybe not even visual at all. but everything we show is visual. We don't just do sound or, assemblage. It's very much like about enjoying what you're seeing.
Do you have any current or upcoming projects?
I'm working on a new body of work that I don't have so much I'm ready to say about it, but I can say generally I'm really interested in performance. One painting that I did actually share a while ago, I made it before I even left for Berlin, was this bust of Larry David. And that is kind of where my head has been at, thinking about icons in entertainment, comedians, and almost like this bygone era of Jewish entertainers and performers. And I've been doing a lot of research also into the Yiddish theater in New York and all kinds of performance. And I'm really interested in how performance also relates to culture. When you look at images of weddings and bar mitzvahs and things like this, how there's a lot of similarities between being on a stage and being on a bima and performing for an audience versus like performing for your own community. And think about, lavish bar mitzvahs where people in a suburb are competing to spend more money on the party. And so I've been thinking about that. Not sure how it's going to look, but also kind of feeling like the world is on fire in a lot of ways. I mean, it's literally on fire right now in New York. We have smoke coming from Canada, but it feels like a really intense time politically and socially. And I do think that the work, while using Jewish references, like I still kind of want to hint at this feeling in the world that everything feels like performance. So I think that's kind of the direction I'm headed in,
And maybe exercise can be a part of that.
Yeah, getting out the frustration.
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking just like paintings of old Jewish ladies doing their exercise class or that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, actually, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I'd buy that.
Oh, something to think about. I'm going to see if I can find some historic images of that.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Hannah.
Thank you. It's great.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.